On June 12, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion in Iran. In the space of a day, several key Iranian officials were killed, and some of the country's most important nuclear sites lay in ruins. This was a massive victory for Israel and a huge defeat for Iran. However, there's something that many aren't considering. Israel didn't just hurt Iran on June 12, it sent shockwaves through Russia. That's because most of Iran's air defense systems, which are the very weapons that should have stopped Operation Rising Lion, didn't do their jobs. Iran's air defense failed, and now Russia is worried that its own defenses will fall even faster. Now, before diving deeper into why Russia is so scared, it's important to provide a recap of Operation Rising Lion to assess the sheer scale of the damage Israel managed to do from June 12 into June 13. It's known for certain that Rising Lion devastated some key Iranian military sites. The BBC reports that explosions started rocking the Iranian capital of Tehran at 3:30 AM local time, and more blasts were soon being felt all over the country. Mere hours after the initial strikes, the Natanz nuclear facility, which is about 140 miles south of Tehran, was in flames. A massive explosion rocked the facility, with the Israel Defense Forces later confirming the strike and revealing that it caused significant damage to the facility. While no rise in radiation levels was reported, suggesting that Israel didn't hit the site's most critical facilities, this was a clear indication of how effective Israel's strike was. Natanz should never have been hit. Neither should the Isfahan and Fordow nuclear sites, both of which also emerged as targets for Rising Lion, according to CNN. The same outlet reports that satellite images show a significant impact in at least one of those locations, and speaks to the Iran project director of the International Crisis Group, Ali Vaez. The whole nuclear supply chain has been disrupted, Vaez tells CNN. This chain is now broken, but it could be put back together in a matter of months because Iran both has the know-how and the material that is required for it. Vaez also notes that airstrikes alone aren't going to solve the Iran nuclear problem. But Israel won't care. Hitting those three sites once shows Israel that it can likely hit them again and again. After all, these are some of the most important and thus the most well-protected sites in Iran. Their air defenses failed, now those sites are severely damaged. Beyond hitting key military sites, Israel also managed to take out some of Iran's most important military and nuclear officials. Australia's ABC News outlet says that at least 12 Iranian officials have been killed in Operation Rising Lion, including several key generals who are advisors to Iran's supreme leader Al Khamenei. That's huge for Israel. It launched a decapitation strategy designed to take out the key figures in Iran's regime. And again, it managed it all with airstrikes against which Iran was supposed to be able to defend. On top of all of this, Iran claims that at least 78 people have been killed, including civilians and children, according to the BBC. We go into a lot more detail about Rising Lion and what it achieved in our video covering the initial strike, so check that out for more information. That leads to an obvious question. What does any of this have to do with Russia? The answer lies in Iran's air defenses. The reality that Russian officials are now facing is that Iran's air defenses failed catastrophically during Operation Rising Lion. That's a problem. Iran's air defenses are primarily made up of Russian systems, or copies of Russian systems such as the S-300 and S-400. These systems are supposed to be the creme de la creme of Russian air defense, and the Kremlin has just been forced to watch as they proved themselves to be absolutely useless against a concerted and well-organized aerial assault carried out by hordes of Israeli fighter jets. That's according to Defense Blog, which points to the fear that's currently spreading around Russia's military commentators. According to Russian-language military forums and unofficial commentary shared across pro-Kremlin channels, Defense Blog says, the Israeli operation has amplified existing doubts about Russia's capacity to withstand a coordinated assault from a technologically advanced adversary such as NATO. As one commentator put it, everyone here understands this is exactly what would happen to Russia if any NATO country decided to act. That NATO point is worth coming back to. First, it's important to understand just how deeply Iran's vaunted air defenses were entrenched in Russian technology. As Forbes reported back in August 2024, Iran constantly took delivery of Russian systems to bolster its air defenses. Back then, it was a horde of Russian radars and air defense equipment, though Forbes said it didn't know exactly what was being sent. It did point out that Iran already operated Russia's supposedly advanced S-300 PMU-2 air defense system, along with its shorter-range Buk and Tor systems. The Russian S-400 has also long been on Iran's want list, meaning it's possible the August 2024 delivery included that system. Even at the time, Forbes senior contributor Paul Idden said that this was a dangerous play by Russia. Any imminent or ongoing delivery of advanced Russian military hardware to Iran now could prove risky for Moscow, Idden said. Iran has vowed to attack Israel since the July 31 assassination of Hamas's political leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran. Any Iranian attack will likely incur an Israeli response, and possibly the targeting of advanced Iranian military hardware, including Russian-built systems. Idden may not have known how prophetic his words would prove to be. Iran did indeed attempt to respond to the assassination, though that response didn't prompt Operation Rising Lion. Still, when Israel finally did start to hit Iran hard, all of those Russian air defense systems were put to a test that they failed. Badly. As Defense Blog notes, Israel launching a high-tempo aerial campaign against these air defenses has exposed them for what they really are. Weapons that are okay at shooting down drones and some long-range missiles, but utterly useless when faced with a complex aerial operation. And that leads back to the NATO problem mentioned earlier. Russia's air defenses have already struggled against Ukraine's approach to taking them out. More on just how badly they've struggled later, but as Defense Blog points out, Ukraine has relied on a combination of modified drones, HIMARS launchers, anti-radiation AGM-88 HARM missiles, and similar technologies to destroy what's taken out so far. The approach is cost-effective and tends to target Russia's air defenses on a small scale. An attack here, a strike there, Ukraine has whittled away at Russia's air defenses in key locations, opening the door for long-range drone and missile strikes elsewhere. And when that hasn't worked, Ukraine has overwhelmed Russia's systems by sending hordes of drones as decoys to allow its attacking munitions to hit their targets. Russian air defense weakness has already been exposed by Ukraine. But Russia hasn't faced anything like the strike that Israel carried out against Iran because Ukraine doesn't have the aerial capacity to do something like that. According to the Jewish News Syndicate, Operation Rising Lion saw Israel attack around 100 targets using 200 aircraft that dropped 330 munitions. On the aircraft front alone, Ukraine doesn't compare to Israel. Most of the aircraft Israel used against Iran were fighter jets. According to Global Firepower, which ranks 145 nations based on the strength of their militaries annually, Ukraine only has 70 fighters, only 39 of which are in a state of combat readiness. Its entire air force only has 324 aircraft, 178 of which are combat ready. The point here is that Ukraine has fewer combat-ready aircraft than Israel used to strike Iran, never mind the fighter jets it would need to pull off a strike of this type. But NATO? Now that's a different story. According to Statista, as of 2025, NATO has a staggering 22,377 aircraft across its 32 member states. Several of those states, including Turkey and France, have over 1,000 aircraft, with many others boasting several hundred. Then there's the United States. It has 14,341 aircraft, says Statista. Of course, not all of these aircraft are fighter jets. However, plenty are, and those jets are among the most advanced that the world has to offer. F-35s, Eurofighter Typhoons, French Mirages, and many more jets are in this collective NATO arsenal. That's what has Russia so worried. What it's just seen in Iran is the categorical failure of the air defenses it supplied to Iran against 200 Israeli fighter jets. NATO, as a collective, can unleash hundreds, if not thousands more of the same types of jets against Russia. And if Iran's S-300s, Buks, Tors, and perhaps even S-400s weren't able to do a thing to stop Israel's jets, what hope would they have against a much larger force of NATO jets launching a concerted assault against key Russian military sites? Defense Blog exposes this problem. It says that Israel's strike involved large-scale use of fighter jets, advanced cruise missiles, and a multi-layered aerial strategy. These are all things to which NATO has access. It also says that both Ukraine's and Israel's approaches have highlighted problems in Russia's air defense platform. Despite these differences in scale and sophistication, the blog says when talking about the two approaches, The outcomes have exposed similar weaknesses in Russian and Iranian air defense architecture, much of which is rooted in shared design principles and legacy platforms. In short, Iran's air defenses proved useless against Operation Rising Lion. Russia's defenses, which include the same types of equipment and a similar design principle, are doomed to experience the same type of failure when stacked up against NATO's overwhelming aerial assets. Defense blog points to one recurring assessment that sums up Russia's situation nicely. Absolutely powerless air defense, when what we see in the crosshairs is all we've got. But why is this a problem for Russia? After all, it's not fighting against NATO, and while Ukraine's strategy has been effective, it's not the same as a devastating aerial strike that destroys dozens of Russian military sites within days. So why has what happened in Iran exposed Russia's deepest fears? Part of the reason comes down to the fact that Russia, though it isn't at war with NATO right now, is planning to move beyond Ukraine if it manages to achieve a victory there. That's according to several within the alliance, including German Defense Chief Carsten Breuer. On June 1st, the BBC reported on comments Breuer made during the Shangri-La Dialogue Defense Summit in Singapore, referring to what's happening in Russia right now.
There's an intent and there's a buildup of the stocks.
Then he dropped the bombshell.
And this is what the analysts are assessing in 2029. So we have to be ready by 2029. If you ask me now, is this a guarantee that's not earlier than 2029? I would say no, it's not. So we must be able to fight tonight.
The point here is that many in NATO believe a Russian attack on a NATO member state is coming, and coming soon. Less than 4 years is Breuer's assessment. Therein lies the problem for Putin. He may assume that he can launch the same type of campaign against a smaller NATO nation, such as one of the Baltic states, as he's using in Ukraine. And he'd probably be right were it not for one thing: Article 5 of the NATO Charter. Under that article, all NATO member nations are duty-bound to come to the aid of any singular member that's attacked on its own soil. If Putin attacks a NATO member, he'll have to face the full wrath of the combined NATO aerial forces mentioned earlier. And for as much as many in NATO are worried that the collective, particularly the NATO members in Europe, aren't ready for war with Russia, what happened in Iran also proved that Russia's air defenses aren't ready for NATO. That would be the case if those defenses were operating at full strength, as Iran's were, but they're not, which leads to the second reason why what happened in Iran is such a problem for Russia. Putin's forces are already dramatically weakened. Discussed earlier was how Ukraine's approach to taking out Russia's air defenses is vastly different from what Israel pulled off in Iran and what NATO could do to Russia. But different doesn't mean ineffective. Ukraine has destroyed plenty of Russia's air defenses. According to Ukraine's Ministry of Defense, 1,187 of Russia's anti-aircraft defenses now lie in ruins, both in Russia and on the Ukrainian battlefield. And there are plenty of examples of Ukraine's success. Just take what happened on June 15 as an example. Just 3 days after Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, Ukraine used intelligence drones to wipe out around $70 million of Russia's air defenses in the Zaporizhia region of southeastern Ukraine. To pull off this strike, United 24 media says Ukraine had to hit an air defense system in Ukrainian territory that Russia occupies. This time, it took down a Pantsir S-1 air defense system with a pair of kamikaze drones. Footage shot by a different Ukrainian drone showed the Pantsir missing its target with a missile before switching to its 30mm cannon to try and shoot it down. Both attempts failed. The first drone hit home. Though that drone didn't disable the Pantsir, a second managed to by hitting the system's combat module. There are many more instances of Ukraine pulling off feats like this against Russia's air defenses, with this particular incident also showing that a Pantsir is capable of missing a drone with a missile. If that's the case, then what hope would this sort of air defense system have against fighter jets and cruise missiles that can break the sound barrier? And even if they can hit home, Russia is losing more of its air defense systems by the day. The reality Putin is now facing is that his already weakened anti-air strategy is already failing against Ukraine and will be useless against a NATO-led aerial bombardment. And it gets worse for Russia. Delving deeper into Operation Rising Lion leads us to the revelation that Israel managed to pull off that attack in part because its Mossad operatives managed to sneak into Iran to disable many of its aerial defenses. According to CNN, Mossad managed to sneak weapons into Iran ahead of Israel's strikes, which operatives then used to target Iran's defenses from within its own territory. Holly Dagres, who works with the Washington Institute as a senior fellow, says that this shows just how weak Iran's defenses against subterfuge are. Mossad has treated Iran like its playground for years now, Dagres says. From assassinating top nuclear scientists to sabotaging Iranian nuclear facilities, Israel has proved time and time again that it always has the upper hand in this shadow war that's now been playing out in the open since the first tit-for-tat strikes in April 2024. There's a good reason why Russia is so worried about what Mossad is doing in Iran. It all mirrors things that Ukraine has been doing in Russia since Putin invaded. Assassinations are becoming commonplace on Russian territory, even if Ukraine doesn't take credit for them. There are many examples, such as the death in a car bombing of Russian Army General Yaroslav Moskalik in April, and the assassination, this time with a bomb concealed inside a scooter, of Lieutenant General Igor Kirillov in December. These are Mossad-like operations, and it goes deeper. Israel pulled off Operation Rising Lion by sneaking weapons into Iran. Does that sound familiar? It should. On June 1st, Ukraine did something very similar with Operation Spiderweb, which saw it destroy a third of Russia's bomber fleet, using drones it sneaked into Russia via trucks. All of this means Putin is dealing with another new reality, where he knows that Ukrainian operatives are working on his territory, but he can't do anything about them. If he could, there'd be news about it. The Kremlin's propagandists would love to say that Russia is catching Ukrainian spies all over the country. But it isn't, because those spies are staying hidden and conducting successful operations. Now, think about what this could mean for a future where Russia is at war with NATO. Ukraine has already exposed that Russia shares the same vulnerabilities as Iran on the subterfuge front as well as the air defense structure front. That means what Mossad pulled off in Iran could serve as a blueprint for future aerial strikes against Russia. Combine that subterfuge with NATO's overwhelming aerial force, and Putin faces a serious problem. Reassessment lies in the future for Russia, Defense Blog concludes. Now that Putin has seen how badly the air defenses his country created have failed against Israel, he has to change tack. He also knows that Ukraine is capable of pulling off similar operations to Mossad, meaning his defenses could be struck down before they even have a chance to fire on incoming planes. Presumably, NATO nations will also be able to send their own spies into Russian territory if the defense collective ever felt it needed to pull off something similar to Rising Lion. The fear, voiced increasingly openly, is that in the event of a NATO-led operation, Russia's strategic missile assets and high-value infrastructure could be targeted and destroyed in a matter of hours, Defense Blog says. Not weeks, not even days, hours. Israel served as a live demonstration of the fact that Russia's air defenses aren't anywhere near as strong as they need to be if Putin is serious about going to war with NATO. Coordinated air power has emerged as Russia's biggest weak point, and if Putin truly is thinking about attacking beyond Ukraine within the next 4 years, he's not going to have much time to do anything about it against a backdrop of Ukraine taking out so many of its air defense systems. And all of this is without us even covering how what happened to Iran might affect Russia's future weapons sales. The reality is that Ukraine has already proven that all Russian weapons suck, and Israel just added an exclamation point to that fact. Russia has no more buyers, as you'll learn if you check out our video highlighting just how bad Russia's weapons really are. And if you enjoy this video, remember to subscribe to The Military Show for more commentaries on Russia's military failings.